The corpse was discovered last week, frozen in the ice of a glacier on the Austro-Italian border. Since then, scientists have been supervising its removal.
Are you ready to uncover the secrets of the past? Today, we're diving deep into the past, uncovering the mysteries locked with the ancient DNA of Ötzi the Iceman. Stay tuned as we unravel these stunning discoveries right now.
Looks like the cause of death is an arrow. Interestingly, the shaft of the arrow that entered his shoulder wasn't found anywhere in the area.
DNA sequencing has shed light on the secrets of Europe's oldest natural mummy, Ötzi the Iceman. Over 30 years ago, hikers stumbled upon this ancient mummy face down in the ice, perched near a lake high up in the Otzi Alps along the Austria-Italy border. Otzi, remarkably preserved for over 5,000 years by the harsh elements, quickly captured the world's attention. His story has been the focus of many books, documentaries, and even a movie that depicts his life in the Neolithic era and his untimely demise. Today, Otzi is in the expert hands of scientists in the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology in Bolzano, Italy. His aged body is stored in a specially designed cold chamber, where temperatures are kept at a brisk minus 21.2 degrees Fahrenheit. To preserve his status as a wet mummy, one that's naturally preserved in the moist conditions rather than dry, he is sprayed with sterile water 4 or 5 times a year, creating a frosty outer shell that protects him. Otzi, nicknamed the Iceman, was a guy who lived way back between 3350 and 3105 BC. This ancient dude was found on September 19, 1991, chilling in the Otzi Alps. That's where he got his cool name Otzi from. He's actually the oldest mummy we know of in Europe and gives us a rare peek into life during the Copper Age. Turns out, Otzi met a pretty rough end. He had an arrowhead stuck in his shoulder and a bunch of other injuries, so it looks like he was killed. There's a ton of guesswork and detective work going into figuring out his life story and how he ended up dying. Nowadays, you can check out his remains and the stuff he had with him at the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology in Bolzano, Italy. How was Otzi found? Back on September 19, 1991, 2 German tourists, Helmut and Erika Simon, were hiking way up at 3,200 meters, that's about 10,530 feet, on the east ridge of the Fenelspitze in the Otzi Alps, right on the east ridge of the Fenelspitze in the Otzi Alps, right on the border between Austria and Italy, near the Simuluen Mountain and the Tisnajak Pass. They stumbled upon Otzi, and at first, they totally thought they'd found a modern-day mountaineer who had recently met an unfortunate end. The day after, a local mountain cop and the person running in the Simulene nearby tried to dig the body out. Otzi was half stuck in the ice from the waist down, so they brought out a pneumatic drill and ice axes to free him. But the weather turned sour and they had to stop. Pretty soon, the spot became a bit of a hotspot. Within a short time, 8 different groups swung by, including famous mountaineers Hans Kammerlander and Reinhold Messner. The remains were retrieved on September 22nd and recovered the next day. They were taken into Innsbruck's medical examiner's office along with other nearby discoveries. On September 24th, Konrad Spindler, an archaeologist from the University of Innsbruck, inspected the finds. Based on the typology of an axe found with them, he estimated the artifacts to be over 4,000 years old. Subsequent analysis of tissue samples from the body and related materials by various scientific institutions determined that the individual had lived around 5,000 years ago, specifically between 3359 and 3105 BC. Further detailed probabilities suggest a 66% likelihood of death between 3239 and 3105 BC, a 33% chance between 3359 and 3294 BC, and a 1% possibility between 3277 and 3268 BC. Border dispute. In 1919, at the Treaty of Saint-Germain-en-Laye, they set the North and South Tyrol border along the rivers Inn and Etsch watershed. Near Tisnajak, the then-present glacier made it tricky to mark the border accurately, and it ended up a bit too far north. Although the spot where Otzi was found drains towards Austria, surveys in October 1991 confirmed that he was actually 92.56 meters inside Italy, matching Italy's claim from 1919. South Tyrol initially claimed ownership, but allowed the University of Innsbruck to complete its research. Since 1998, Otzi has been in permanent exhibit at the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology in Bolzano, the capital of South Tyrol. What happened to the corpse? Otzi's body got the full workup. They measured it, x-rayed it, dated it, and even looked at his tissues and what he ate under a microscope. They did the same for the stuff found with him. In August 2004, they stumbled upon 3 frozen Austro-Hungarian soldiers on Punta San Matteo in Trentino, lost since the 1918 Battle of San Matteo. One of these bodies was shipped off to a museum, hoping that studying its preservation in the environment could shed more light on Otzi's story. Otzi's body. The latest estimates suggest that Otzi was around 160 centimeters, 5 feet 3 inches tall, weighed about 50 kilograms, 110 pounds, and was about 45 years old when he died. At the time his body was discovered, it weighed 13.75 kilograms, 30 pounds 5 ounces. Otzi's body was only partially decomposed because it was quickly covered in ice after his death. Early reports inaccurately claimed that his penis and most of his scrotum were missing, but that was later disproved. Studies of the pollen, dust particles, and the isotopic makeup of his tooth enamel show that he grew up near what's now the village of Feldthurns in South Tyrol, north of Bolzano. Later in life, he moved to valleys around 50 kilometers, 31 miles further north. In 2009, a CAT scan showed that Otzi's stomach had moved up to where you'd usually find the lower lung. When they checked out what was inside, they found bits of ibex meat, which DNA tests confirmed. This suggests he ate less than 2 hours before he died. They also found wheat grains. It seems like Otzi probably snacked on some dried fatty meat like bacon from a wild goat in South Tyrol, Italy. His intestines revealed he had 2 meals before he died. One about 8 hours earlier consisting of chamois meat, and the other a mix of red deer and herb bread, both with roots and fruits. The grain he ate with these meals was a well-processed einkorn wheat bran, likely in bread form. Near his body, they also found einkorn and barley chaff in grains, flax and poppy seeds, sloe kernels, they're like tiny plumes from the blackthorn tree, and various wild berry seeds, possibly his travel snacks. They used hair analysis to figure out what he had eaten a few months back. Turns out the first meal he had was in a mid-altitude conifer forest. You can tell because of the pollen in it. There was also pollen from wheat and legumes, probably crops someone grew. They even found pollen from hop horn beans. This pollen was in great shape, with the cells inside still whole, showing it was pretty fresh, like about 2 hours fresh when Otzi died. That means it was probably spring or early summer then. And since einkorn wheat is picked in late summer and slows in fall, these foods must have been leftovers from the year before. Otzi's hair contained high amounts of copper and arsenic. Combined with his nearly pure copper axe, this suggests he might have been into copper smelting. Also, looking at the size of his tibia, femur, and pelvis, it seems like he was used to long walks across hilly areas. This level of activity wasn't common for Copper Age Europeans, hinting that Otzi could have been a shepherd in high altitudes. Thanks to advanced 3D scanning, they've made a digital reconstruction of Otzi's face for the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology in Bolzano, Italy. The image shows him looking older than his 45 years, with deep brown eyes, a beard, a lined face, and hollow cheeks, giving off a vibe of being weary and a bit unkempt. Otzi's health. Turns out, Otzi had a bout with whipworm, a kind of gut bug. When they scanned him with CT, they noticed a few of his right ribs were broken, maybe because he was squished by ice or from lying face down after he kicked the bucket. They found a couple of his fingernails and wood handy's lines called Bow's lines. Looks like he got sick 3 times in the last half year of his life. The final sickness hit him 2 months before he died and hung around for a couple of weeks. Otzi's skin was missing the top layer, which is pretty normal considering he was mummified in ice. His teeth were a mess, lots of cavities, probably from eating loads of grains and carbs. They did some DNA testing in 2012 and figured out he couldn't handle lactose. That means being lactose intolerant was probably pretty common back in his day, even though people were getting more into farming and dairy. They also checked out Otzi's lungs and found them all blackened with soot, likely from hanging around open fires a lot, either to cook or stay warm. Otzi's tattoos. Otzi was rocking 61 tattoos made up of 19 sets of black lines. These lines were pretty thin, about 1 to 3 millimeters wide, and varied in length from 7 to 40 millimeters. He had lines running along his body and on both sides of his lower back, plus a cross-shaped tattoo behind his right knee and on his right ankle, and some lines around his left wrist. Most of his tattoos were on his legs, with 12 sets of lines there. When they looked at these tattoos under a microscope, they figured out they were made with pigment from fireplace ash or soot, which was rubbed into little cuts or punctures on his skin. It seems like Otzi got tattooed in the same spots over and over, since most of the tattoos are still pretty dark. X-rays of Otzi's skeleton revealed signs of wear and tear, like degeneration typical of aging or physical stress in many areas where he had tattoos. This included issues like osteochondrosis and mild spondylolisthesis in his lower back, and more noticeable degeneration in his knee and ankle joints. There's a theory that his tattoos might have been an early form of pain management, kind of like acupressure or acupuncture. This is interesting because Otzi lived at least 2,000 years before these practices were first known to be used in China, around 1000 BC. For instance, 9 out of his 19 tattoo groups are right on or near spots used in modern acupuncture, and most of the others are along energy pathways or meridians, often over joints with arthritis. The tattoos on his abdomen might have even been a way to ease the discomfort from whipworm, which they think he suffered from. Initially, Otzi was considered the oldest mummy with tattoos ever found, but in 2018, this changed when tattoos were found on Egyptian mummies from around the same period. Many of Otzi's tattoos were overlooked because they're hard to spot with just the human eye. In 2015, scientists used non-invasive multispectral imaging to photograph his body. This technique captures images at various light wavelengths that we can't see, and it helped to uncover the rest of his tattoos. Otzi's clothes and shoes. Otzi donned a grass-woven cloak and an ensemble of leather garments, including a coat, belt, leggings, loincloth, and shoes, each crafted from various animal skins. His head was adorned with a bearskin cap, complete with a leather chin strap. His footwear, designed for snow traversal, featured waterproof, broad designs with soles of bearskin, upper panels of deer hide, and tree bark netting. Inside the shoes, soft grass encased the feet, serving a purpose akin to modern socks. His coat, belt, leggings, and loincloth were fashioned from vertically aligned leather strips, stitched together using sinew. Attached to his belt was a pouch holding essential items: a scraper, drill, flint flake, bone awl, and dried fungus. A Czech academic, who made replicas of the shoes, mentioned that they are quite intricate, leading him to believe that even 5,300 years ago, there must have been something like a cobbler who crafted shoes for others. These replicas turned out to be so impressive that a Czech company even considered buying the rights to sell them. On the flip side, British archaeologist Jackie Wood has a different take, suggesting that what we think are Otzi's shoes might actually have been the top part of snowshoes. She believes the object thought to be part of a backpack could actually be the wooden frame and netting of a snowshoe, along with some animal hide for facial protection. Otzi's leather loincloth and hide coat came from sheepskin, and genetic tests revealed that these sheep were closer to today's domestic European sheep than to their wild cousins. Turns out, the clothing pieces were crafted from the skins of at least 4 different animals. A portion of the coat even came from a domesticated goat that's part of a mitochondrial lineage still found in Central Europe. This coat was a mix and match of several animals from 2 species, all stitched together neatly. The leggings? They were made from the leather of domesticated goats. Interestingly, a similar pair of 5,000-year-old goat leather leggings was found in Schindejach, Switzerland. The shoelaces were made from a cattle that belonged to a European genetic group. His quiver was crafted from wild roe deer, and his fur hat was made from a type of brown bear that's still around in that area today. In an article for the journal Scientific Reports, a team of researchers from Ireland and Italy shared their findings after analyzing mitochondrial DNA. They extracted this DNA from 9 pieces of 6 of Otzi's clothing items, like his loincloth and fur cap. Along with the Iceman, several items were discovered: a U-handled copper axe, an ash-handled knife with a chert blade, and a quiver containing 14 arrows with shafts made of viburnum and dogwood. Of these arrows, 2 were broken, flint-tipped, and had stabilizing fins, while the remaining 12 were in an unfinished state without tips. The quiver also held a presumed bowstring, an unidentified tool, and a tool made of antler possibly used for arrow point sharpening. Additionally, an incomplete yew longbow measuring 1.82 meters, 72 inches in length was found. Also, Otzi had some berries, a couple of birch bark baskets, and 2 kinds of polypore mushrooms strung up with leather. One, the birch fungus, has properties that can get rid of intestinal worms, so he likely used it for healing. The other mushroom was for starting fires, part of a pretty detailed fire-making kit. This kit had bits of over a dozen different plants, along with flint and pyrite for sparking up fires. Otzi's copper axe is super interesting. It's got a 60 centimeter, 24-inch long handle made from nicely shaped yew wood. The handle has this cool right-angled bend near the top, where the blade attaches. Speaking of the blade, it's 9.5 centimeters, 3.7 inches long, and crafted from almost pure copper. They made it by casting, cold forging, polishing, and sharpening. Even though people knew about copper ore in the Alps back then, research shows that the copper for this axe actually came from southern Tuscany. The axe head was set into the bent part of the handle and held in place with birch tar and tight leather straps. The blade sticks out of the straps, and you can tell it was used for a lot of chopping and cutting. Back in the day, owning an axe like this was a big deal. It was not just a useful tool, but also a symbol of status for the person carrying it. Otzi's genetic analysis. Otzi's full genetic sequence was first decoded in 2012. By 2023, a newer version with high accuracy and less contamination from modern humans was released. The 2012 research found that Otzi's paternal lineage falls under a specific group known as G-L91, identified by several genetic markers M201, P287, P15, L223, and L91. While not further classified within this group, additional analysis of his genetic data indicated he belonged to the L166 and FGC5672 subgroups under L91. Today, G-L91 is mainly seen in South Corsica. His maternal DNA places him in the K1 subgroup, but he doesn't fit into any of the known branches, K1A, K1B, or K1C. This unique lineage has been tentatively named K10 after Otzi. Studies confirmed that his mitochondrial DNA is part of a rare European group. On a broader genetic scale, Otzi shows the closest ties to Southern Europeans, particularly isolated groups like Corsicans and Sardinians. His ancestry is linked to early European farmers who moved from Anatolia to Europe in the 7th millennium BC, overtaking the hunter-gatherer populations. DNA tests also indicated Otzi had a high risk for heart disease and lactose intolerance and carried genetic markers of Borrelia burgdorferi, pointing to him as possibly the earliest human known with Lyme disease. However, later analysis suggested this might be a different Borrelia species. The 2023 research on Otzi's genetic makeup revealed a predominantly Anatolian farmer ancestry, 90%, the highest among European populations of that era, with a smaller percentage of European hunter-gatherer ancestry. Unlike the 2012 findings, this study found no steppe-related ancestry, attributing this discrepancy to contamination from modern humans. The absence of Western steppe herder (WSH) genetic elements in Otzi's DNA is not unexpected, as these Proto-Indo-European groups reached Central Europe later, around 2900 BC. The minimal Western hunter-gatherer (WHG) genetic influence suggests that the integration of Anatolian Neolithic farmers and WHG was still in progress in Otzi's region and time. Additionally, the analysis of genes related to physical characteristics suggested that Otzi probably had darker skin than modern Europeans, but lighter than Mesolithic WHGs, possibly experienced baldness, and might have been prone to obesity-related health issues. In October 2013, there was some interesting news. 19 guys from Tyrol turned out to be part of the same family tree as Otzi, the famous Iceman. They all have this Y DNA haplogroup GL91 just like Otzi. It's possible they're related to him or come from his close relatives. Researchers at the Institute of Legal Medicine and Innsbruck Medical University checked out the DNA of over 3,700 Tyrolean dudes who donated blood. And guess what? They found that about 0.5% of them, that's 19 guys, are in the same fraternal group as Otzi, who's been around for over 5,300 years. Otzi's blood. In May 2012, researchers came across something pretty cool about Otzi. Turns out he still had blood cells that were in good shape. These are the oldest human blood cells ever found that are still all together. Usually in really old bodies like his, the blood cells are either super tiny or just bits and pieces. But Otzi's blood cells, they're just like the ones you'd find in someone alive today. Same size and everything. In 2016, scientists did a study where they took 12 samples from Otzi's stomach and intestines to check out the bacteria in there. They were looking at this specific type called the Helicobacter pylori. The big surprise was that Otzi had a type of H. pylori called the HP Asia 2 strain, which you usually find in people from South Asia and Central Asia today. It's super rare in modern Europeans. The strain in Otzi's gut is really similar to what's found in some folks from northern India these days. But of course, Otzi's strain is way older than the modern version. Otzi's stomach. Otzi's stomach was totally full, and the food in it hadn't been digested much. In 2018, some researchers decided to take a closer look at what was in his stomach and intestines. They wanted to figure out what people ate during the Chalcolithic period. They took tiny samples from his stomach to see what he ate just before he died and analyzed everything inside. Before this, people thought Otzi was a vegetarian, but it turns out he ate all sorts of stuff, like meats and plants. They found stuff in his stomach that showed he ate herbs and also red meat or dairy. By looking at his DNA and protein bits, they figured out his last meal had fat and meat from ibex and red deer, plus some ancient kind of wheat called einkorn. They used some fancy techniques like atomic force microscopy and Raman spectroscopy and found out he probably ate fresh or dried wild meat. Another study found charcoal in his lower intestines, suggesting that fire was used in preparing his food, maybe to dry or smoke the meat. Otzi's cause of death. It took about 10 years after finding Otzi's body to really figure out how he died. At first, everyone thought he might just have gotten caught in a nasty winter storm and didn't make it. Then some people started thinking maybe he was part of a ritual sacrifice, like maybe because he was an important leader or something. This idea kind of came from what people thought about other ancient bodies found in peat bogs, like Toland Man and the Lindau Man. Back in 2001, some x-rays and a CT scan showed that Otzi had an arrowhead stuck in his left shoulder when he died, and his coat even had a small tear to match. Finding the arrowhead made researchers think that Otzi probably died from losing too much blood from that wound. They figured that even with today's medical know-how, that kind of injury would have been really serious. They also found out that someone had taken the arrow shaft out before he died. When they looked closer at his body, they saw bruises and cuts on his hands, wrists, and chest, plus some head injury that looked like he got hit. One of the cuts, right at the base of his thumb, was so deep it hit bone and didn't have any time to heal before he died. Now, it's generally believed that Otzi bled out after the arrow broke his shoulder blade and messed up some nerves and blood vessels, eventually ending up near his lung. DNA tests done in 2003 turned up something interesting. They found bits of blood from at least 4 different people on Otzi's stuff. There was some on his knife, 2 different sets on a single arrowhead in his quiver, and another set on his coat. What this might mean is that Otzi used the same arrow to take out 2 people and managed to get his arrow back each time. The blood on his coat could have come from a buddy he was helping, maybe even carrying on his back. The way Otzi was found, face down with his left arm across his chest, might suggest that someone flipped him over after he died, probably trying to pull out the arrow shaft. And in the Cambridge World History of Violence from 2020, they actually mentioned Otzi as evidence that there was warfare way back in prehistoric times. Alternative theory of death location. Most people have thought that Otzi died right where he was found. But in 2010, a new idea came up. Alessandro Vanzetti, an archaeologist from Sapienza University of Rome, and his team suggested that Otzi might have actually died lower down the mountain and then he was buried higher up. They looked at the stuff found near Otzi and where it all was, and thought maybe he was placed above what looked like a stone burial mound. But then, as the ice melted and refrozen over time, his body might have moved downhill with the melting water. Klaus Egel, an archaeobotanist from the University of Innsbruck, agrees that natural processes could have moved the body from its original spot. However, he's not totally convinced that the stones around Otzi were actually a burial platform. And then there's biological anthropologist Albert Zink. He points out that Otzi's bones don't show any signs of being moved downhill. Plus, the blood clots from his arrow wound would likely have been damaged if this body had been moved up the mountain. Regardless of whether Otzi was buried or not, it still seems likely that he died a violent death. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through the past as we uncovered the astonishing secrets of Ötzi the Iceman through the lens of modern science. If you're fascinated by the past and eager for more discoveries, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. This way, you won't miss out on any of our upcoming explorations into the secrets of history. Alright, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.